What is the strangest mystery that is still unsolved? The lost A-bomb off the coast of America, which the US government said not to worry about in the 50s and tried to cover up, was dumped in the ocean in an aviation accident, and it's still lost to this day. 100x more powerful than what was dropped in Japan. There was this other bomb that fell out of a bomb bay above the US. They told everyone it was fine, but later revealed that 3 out of 4 safety thingies had been actuated. Only one more and there would have been an explosion. I can't find it, but it should be in here along with other accidents, etc. I remember seeing a video about a woman that after getting divorced started getting stalked and assaulted in her own house. Every time police would arrive, no one more than her was at the scene. Sometimes she would appear with bruises, once she appeared with a screwdriver through her hand. This happened so many times that police started ignoring her calls after the investigation on her husband and on the case left no suspects. 3 months later she disappeared just to reappear next to a highway in the middle of the desert, miles away from her house, with her hands tied, dead. Autopsy later confirmed she was beaten to death. Creepiest shit I know. Edit. The case is the death of Cindy James. Some of the details are different, but it's all detailed there. The Oakville Blob. In 1994, there was a rainstorm in Oakville, WA. Only the raindrops were a strange clear substance that had the consistency of jello. Lots of people experienced flu-like symptoms after coming into contact with it, and people's dogs and cats all over the city were dying. When a local hospital ran a lab test on the substance after one of the patients suggested it, it was found that whatever this mysterious rain was, it had human white blood cells in it. Sometime after that, a sample was also sent to the Washington State Health Laboratory, where it was being researched by epidemiologist Mike McDowell. After he determined that it was man-made and speculated that it was some sort of matrix for transporting viruses/bacteria, the samples suddenly went missing from the containment facility and his supervisor told him not to ask any questions. There are no known samples of the stuff anywhere today, despite being sent to several different facilities by various Oakville residents. So yeah, I'd personally say that this was clearly some sort of bioweapon test run, but by whom? I'd like to give the US government the benefit of the doubt here and assume it wasn't us testing something like that on our own citizens, but if it wasn't, why would it have been covered up like that? And you'd think an event like this would be a lot less obscure. Also, even if it being a bioweapon seems super obvious, how the heck did whoever dispersed it manage to make it rain over an entire city for several days? You give them too much credit. There have been several incidents that have come to light in the last few years or decades that involve the US government directly testing weapons and/or medicine on the unwitting and unsuspecting populace. Operation Sea Spray in San Francisco comes to mind. Also, they did something similar in the Chicago subways at some point. Also Shad, where they sprayed toxic substances on ships with thousands of unprepared sailors on board. Edit. Wikipedia has an amazing list of the known bullshit the US Gov has pulled in this similar fashion. The Circleville Letters. In 1976, residents of the small city south of Columbus, Ohio began receiving handwritten, sinister and graphic letters. Each letter included secret and dark details about their personal lives. One resident received a ton of letters, accusing her of various unsavory acts. The author warned the resident that he had been keeping an eye on her home, as well as her comings and goings. The resident was horrified and tried to keep the letters a secret until her husband began receiving them. The attacks on the family continued, with large posters appearing around town spreading rumors about their 12-year-old child. One day in 1977, the husband left the house after receiving a call from who he thought was writing the letters. A few minutes later, the husband was found dead at the end of the street, dead behind the wheel. The sheriff had ruled it a homicide when he realized that a single shot had been fired before the accident, but there was no evidence that the husband was shot at the site. The sheriff found the husband was twice the legal limit and ruled it a drunk driving accident. The letters began once again, this time accusing the sheriff of covering up the true nature of the death. The letters also accused the sheriff of mishandling an investigation into the county coroner, who had been accused of other grotesque acts. The harassment continued, this time with signs along the road, and in 1983, the original resident who had been accused of having an affair pulled over to remove a sign. During the effort to remove the sign, she discovered a box was attached and inside of it was a small pistol. The gun was part of a booby trap designed to fire when the sign was removed. Paul Freshour was arrested and given 25 years, but one small problem. The letter writing continued even after Freshour was put in jail. In a new batch of letters, the author had promised to dig up the grave of a deceased baby and mail the bones to the police in the case of another potential affair turned murder. Hundreds of residents continued to receive personal letters until 1994, when everything stopped. This dude got lost in the catacombs, and they found camera footage of his journey, but at some point he drops the camera and just starts to run. As far as I know, nobody has found out WTF happened to him. This dude got lost in the catacombs, and they found camera footage of his journey, but at some point he drops the camera and just starts to run. As far as I know, nobody has found out WTF happened to him. I remember seeing this video on YouTube of this guy who went to explore an old Civil War era mine, in the US. He reached the end and made his way back, and about halfway through really loud whispers suddenly came from where the back of the mine and he bolted out of there. Really spooky and unexplained until someone in the comments noticed the whispers followed the exact cadence of a sentence he spoke about 5 seconds ago. So it probably was his own voice that got morphed and echoed back to him in a weird way. Spooky AF though.